Hey guys, welcome to the second episode of the NILG.AI Podcast. Today we will have with us Bastian Winkenbach, the head of advanced analytics at Vonovia. We will talk about the challenges on real estate and artificial intelligence or data-driven projects. We will talk about how to manage and grow data teams in large organizations and how to manage these initiatives in such organizations. We'll talk about open innovation, how to create a culture of collaboration, not only across departments, but also between corporates and other entities such as startups, and the challenges around data governance of these kind of projects. Stay until the end. See, I hope you like it. Hi guys, welcome to the second episode of the NILG.AI Podcast. Today I have with me Bastian Winkenbach. Bastian is the head of analytics at Vonovia, so he has a PhD in management, innovation, and entrepreneurship from RWTH Aachen University, and he has been a management consultant at companies such as McKinsey, the Boston Consulting Groups, and he has been working on several different senior roles across multiple industries. Then he shifted towards data science, founding his own analytics consulting company, Venimeco Consulting, and became the head of advanced analytics at Vonovia. In case you don't know Vonovia is one of the largest European real estate companies. Here it's based in Bochum, Germany, and has a portfolio of over 500,000 apartments across several European countries. So quite interesting problems to solve from a data analytics point of view. And I met Bastian as part of our collaboration with Vonovia on the Hands-on Data Initiative. It's an open innovation initiative promoted also in Germany. So it's an honor to have you here talking with us about real estate challenges in AI, how to manage and grow data teams and open innovations as a whole. Thank you, Bastian, for being here with us.
Thank you for having me. It's a great chance. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. So I would like to start with digitalization of real estate in a video that we published a few weeks ago on our YouTube channel. We discussed that there are a lot of opportunities in real estate. This is still a very analog industry with tons of things to solve. So what are the main challenges on this digitalization phase of real estate? How is Vonovia approaching these challenges?
I guess at the moment, when we look at the portfolio that Vonovia has all across Germany and also Switzerland, also Austria and Sweden, basically, we have a brownfield portfolio bought from different predecessing companies. So we have a brownfield approach in terms of digitalization of our assets, of our buildings. We are looking for a digital twin strategy in order to get a digital picture and a digital version of each building, depicting all of these or displaying all of the information that we have about each building. But it's a step-by-step approach. It doesn't, in contrast, it doesn't follow a greenfield approach where you build new buildings, where you can do like a data strategy coming with each new building that you just buy or build. We need to do this on the ex-post version of it, so you need to do it hindsight, and that's actually our challenge right now. But we are looking forward to go over that step by step and delivering interesting use cases on that really deliver value for our core business and beyond. So that's basically one of the key challenges to make our current portfolio in terms of buildings, and these are just in Germany more than 65,000 buildings, digital in terms of being accessible in our systems and having everything at one glance in terms of all the data points belonging to each building, for instance. So that's a big challenge, but we are approaching it step by step. We are realizing pilot projects on that right now and have a really interesting backlog on use cases that we want to pursue on that database then further on.
So digital twins is like it has been there for a while, but it has having like a lot of impact nowadays. Can you talk a bit more about digital twins, so what they are and what can you do with a digital twin that you cannot do with traditional ways of thinking about your assets?
Yeah, for instance, you can see Vonovia as a stock listed company also committed to a climate neutral path, for instance. So we committed to be approximately climate neutral by 2045, which is still some time to go. But at the end, we need to start today and started already in doing real time measures and being really granular in planning measures to reach that goal ultimately at the end, because it's, as I said, it's an existing portfolio of existing buildings that will be there also in 2024, in 2045 actually. So that means that giving us the possibility, or the digital twin will give us the possibility to have these kind of simulations on the, let's say, CO2 footprint and all the ESG factors that we need to, and energy factors that we need to cover in our simulations on a real granular building by building and as is basis. So on real data, on the real state of each building. And that's not possible for so far. For so far, we have like exemplary or clustered buildings and simulate on a very rough basis, but it's still possible and it's reliable as well, these data points. But we get to a much more granular planning of measures of individual projects that we need to realize to reach the next step within our climate path, only with having the digital twin and digital building data in that application. So that's basically one of the motivations to follow this. On the other hand side, everything that comes with investment and everything that comes with planning new quarters. So we think about quarters in terms of several buildings in a district, basically forming one quarter, and planning the development of those in the future, whether it's worth investing in a different shape of that quarter, investing like in an energy concept for that quarter, and so on. All these spending decisions need to be built on reliable data as well. So that's a second perspective one might have on the digital twin as well, because as well there you need really reliable building data on the current state of the buildings. So you really need to know, is the roof still in a good shape? Is it soundproof? Are the chairs and the stairs in a very good condition? And all these very tiny and little things that you all need to know about one building, everything's presented within that digital twin, and that might be like the clue to a lot of use cases for the future, and not just, as I said, the investment and the climate case that I just highlighted.
Yeah, when you have a portfolio of over 500,000 apartments, you need to start thinking about this kind of energy efficiency. So here we're talking almost about a small country in portfolio of apartments. So being carbon neutral as a goal or climate neutral as a goal for Vonovia is like saying we will have a country that will be a small country that will be climate neutral. So it's a very challenging endeavor, I guess. Yeah, I guess you only can do it if you are properly measuring everything that happens around these buildings, interactions between them and with the environment. Yeah. So congrats on that initiative. It sounds quite challenging.
Yeah, it's a big challenge, and can, I think, as Vonovia being the largest landlord basically in Germany, it's also like a responsibility to show what is possible also in the building sector, because a lot of smaller landlords might follow that at the end and copy our methods and our path. So that but that will contribute to the ultimate goal to reach climate neutrality as a total and not just as a company. So it's I think it's well spent money in that project, because it's like also a little bit developing for the entire sector that might help to find solutions to the climate problem.
Yeah, of course. Here, I mean, when we talk about digital twins, we can think about different levels of abstraction. So I guess that for the sense of energy optimization, maybe it's enough to have a rough representation of the building, or for portfolio management, it's enough. But then when you get into more fine-grained use cases, such as the ones we have been tackling, with the image insights challenge, you need a very detailed representation of those apartments, right? So what kind of approach are you taking in this whole spectrum of, I have the building as something very abstract, or I have a building with all of its 3D representation and all of its details? Are you planning to go? It's like a stage roadmap that you have for that, or?
Yeah, it's basically, for now we're doing a pilot study, and within that pilot study we try to dig really into the details and also do, for instance, a 3D scanning of the buildings. So we use drone technology to come up with a really like a twin in terms of having the reality of that building in our model, in our computer, and visible and accessible for everybody. So we've used drones that flew around the buildings to come up with some 3D models and 3D files at the end that we can depict and link these files basically to our static data points. So we can link, for instance, the solar panels that are on the roof to the master data of these solar panels, for instance. So we know, for instance, what's the model of it, who has built it, when was it installed, and all that stuff. But we can also link it to the streaming data, so we can see right now what is the solar power that comes with those solar panels, for instance, and connecting the way of accessing the data, so the 3D visualization, for instance, with the actual data at the end. That's, I guess, or from our perspective, a very good benefit of the current approach, because that makes the data more accessible to a broader range of people within the company. Otherwise, you could have the same information that I just exemplified in a database and just as depicted as a table, for instance, and so on. But it makes it much more accessible and interactable as well. So that's the approach. And as I said, we use drone technology to get the initial state. So we're not focusing on the as is state in terms of how should it be, in terms of how the building was initially built in 1960s. We want to focus on the current state of the building, how it is today. So that's why we decided to do actual like photogrammetry and LiDAR scans in these drones in order to be able to come up with a real picture of today and see also the damages that might be there by today. And we are currently also working on getting a good image or a picture of the inside of each building, going through each of the hallways, the staircases, and the publicly available rooms in order to be able to get a real picture of how do they look like, where are, for instance, all the pipes and electric connections installed right now, so to avoid some visits to the place in order to get a first impression. So now, basically, in our pilot, you can have a pretty good impression of how the building really looks like when you just look at the digital twin, and you have a good impression where exactly the heating is, what kind of thing is installed over there. So you might also save some time in order to get a real-time picture of the building without going there in person.
Yeah, so you're collecting like tons of data for this, and you will keep collecting tons of data. And from what I hear, you are basically start making decision making much more data driven, and that's I guess
that's the ultimate goal.
Yeah, that I guess imposes a lot of difficulties then on data governance, or how you handle data governance with digital twins, because that's like another layer on top of access to the different properties of this data. So have you seen like Vonovia transitioning into a much more data analytics oriented company? I mean, we are talking here about a very analog industry, which is real estate, which is bricks and cement and concrete. But now, we are saying you will have a digital twin, an actual copy of the building with all its interaction, and that will enable decision making. So how does the advanced analytics team, Vonovia, position itself inside the organization in order to foster decision making?
Yeah, I think at the first instance, as you said, data governance is pretty important. So supporting every initiative and every activity that is needed really to install and make data governance live within the company, because that's also in a part a cultural shift. Because as you said, it's a brick and mortar company from its heritage on, from the starting point on. And we now need to switch to being a digital company, and that's a transition process on the one hand side. On the other hand side, regarding also my department, advanced analytics, I think what we contribute to that also cultural shift is to show in interesting use cases and in also beneficiary use cases what data can really come up with in terms of solutions, in terms of really tangible results that people get to get hold of in their daily business, and see really in KPIs and daily work what it brings at the end. So getting pilot use cases onto the road, getting them into a good shape and maintaining them, and that really supports the credibility of the claim that data is a value driver and data is an asset. So it reduces the buzz and it goes into the real demonstration of what is the ultimate goal or vision at the end. So it needs a coherent selection of what use cases you need to follow and then realize and showcase as well, but also the close engagement with the product owners, so with the people that really have the benefit in the field, from the starting point of the use case until like the demonstration phase and also the production phase at the end. So keeping stakeholders close by and integrating them into a data project, in terms of not just throwing some data sets over the fence and doing some crazy stuff and coming up with a result at the end. but rather doing it as a joint project, close corporations and in agile settings. All these aspects help to really underline that data is an asset, and data-driven decision making is really pushing the company forward. And that's, I guess, what we can contribute as a department here to push that transition process that I described initially.
Okay, so here you have a huge responsibility because you need to deal with the multiple life cycles of these projects, doing multiple discoveries and validation of pilots and prototypes to create a cultural transformation inside the company towards more data oriented decisions. But you also need to deliver end of value and organic sustainable value to the organization. So here we are talking about you as a team need to handle both short-term validation and long-term sustainability of these solutions. So how do you handle the thing on this regard?
I think, as you said, it's a twofold approach. So you need to be part of that, let's say, strategic discussion and pushing these strategic topics, like, for instance, the digital twin initiative, like all the little activities or larger activities as well that are needed to get hold of data governance and install data ownership and data stewardship within the company. So that's the first branch, and the second branch would be really to be open to the questions that people have on an operational level to their data points and come up with help and support in use cases, as I said before. But the use case is a larger project, but also in smaller like analysis, support activities, and also knowledge transfer, so to really like get a spillover effect and really help people in the field as well. So not saying, okay, we are a department for advanced analytics, we just do machine learning, and everything which is not machine learning, dealing with Excel files or CSV files is not our business. If we would do that, that's would be not lead to any credibility at the end. So being open for smaller explorative support activities, getting hold of weird data sets that come up out of the business that need to be handled and need to be structured, and patterns need to be recognized. All these activities also need to be followed in order to get a really credibility benefit for the team, for the department, and at the end also for the topic, because it makes up the credibility of a data solution at the end. So these are the three avenues that we follow, the strategic projects to support them, also with manpower and activities, to do our showcase use cases, and as a third pillar, to really help also in smaller bits and pieces in daily work for people to make us really a helpful power in the company.
Yeah. So in this year, I mean, it has been growing, right? But this year, like the interest or the hype on AI grew a lot on data. The other day I was at the restaurant and the waiter asked me like, what do you do? And I told him like AI, and he was all involved in ChatGPT. You know, he has been doing a lot of things for the restaurant using ChatGPT and all of this. So it has gained a lot of traction. Not necessarily, I don't necessarily want to talk about ChatGPT, but have you felt like other departments are more looking towards the data analytics team at Vonovia after this transition or this hype towards generative AI, and more especially with the digital twins initiative? How do you manage all of those requests into a coherent roadmap for your team?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, because as you said, I wouldn't call it a game changer because we have been interested in AI before, and we had also received a lot of interest also before. But as you said, the public interest, basically the general buzz, is increasing much more than before after the ChatGPT wave came across. But generally, I guess a sound selection process of selecting initiatives, of selecting use cases to follow, and also having a sound grid of arguing why you would like to follow the one idea or the other, and the others not, basically, is important to get a credible access here as well. So we follow like a funnel approach here. We have a systematic backlog of ideas, have a clear-cut stage gate approach to narrow this funnel down from stage to stage, and as I said, do it in an agile way as well. So starting with like MVPs and POCs, transitioning them to pilot phases, and then going for a rollout, and making people clear that within each stage, there can be results at the end that make us need to pivot the solution, to change the approach as well. So to be able to get some understanding why it is not that easy, because people with the ChatGPT wave think AI is just a plug away, or just a click away basically, and that's not the case for doing it really in a business context in our setting right now.
Yeah, I guess most of it is managing the expectations so you don't damage the reputation of the team inside the company, and you create value long term and create value together.
Exactly.
Yeah, I agree. How does the team work? How do you manage the team? Is it more horizontally divided? Do you divide it by areas of knowledge? So how does the analytics teams at Vonovia work?
Yeah, at the moment, we have if you talk about the teams, I guess, on a Vonovia perspective, you would also need to talk about all the other teams that are there, because we are just one department within Vonovia that deals with machine learning and advanced analytics. We are called advanced analytics, but we also have dedicated IoT teams, for instance, that are covering more of the technical aspects and doing predictions on where the elevator currently is and whether there might be needing some maintenance tomorrow. So predictive maintenance cases, basically. Also covering the heating systems and all the other IoT sensors as well. We also have, for instance, data scientists in the text departments, and also other departments where you wouldn't think of there being data-driven people too much. So my team of advanced analytics being placed in the innovation department within Vonovia is just one out of several. For us internally, being a small team right now still, but growing, we are having like a pilot co-pilot principle. So we go by use case, having basically one person, one pilot being responsible for one use case. So for one question and one product owner team, and going or following that idea from the beginning in terms of framing the idea, going into the data understanding and the business understanding as well, and then following all the other phases that come at the end or come later to that, into the modeling, for instance, and the testing, and then if everything goes right, into production implementation as well. So we follow like a use case structure approach, like a silos line by line approach, but on the other hand have a very intensive lateral communication within the team. So even if there are like two people in a couple, like pilot and co-pilot for each use case team can exchange with other use case teams within our department. So we have daily meetings where we talk about the operational challenges of that day, basically. So there might be one idea from a completely different and unrelated person that has nothing to do with that pilot co-pilot team for one use case, but has a very good idea as well. So we try to manage both extremes of being really deeply into the topic, but also having a regular exchange with others, even with our small department. But nevertheless, if we grow larger as a team, one might also think about like horizontal layers in terms of specializing on data engineering, specializing on data modeling or algorithm modeling, and also specializing at the end, for instance, on implementation aspects like connections to API, to SAP and API, basically. So basically, this is in the flow. We need to develop further, but for the time being, we have been pretty successful with the kind of organization that I just described.
Yeah, this pattern of, I have seen it a lot on large companies where they have individual analytics teams inside each department, which kind of allows them to have domain specialized people inside that very narrow area of expertise, for example, heating systems, elevators, etc. And then a central data analytics team more oriented towards, horizontal innovation across companies, much more early stage. I think it's a pattern that has a very good trade-off, having people there in each department, doing the last mile of the use cases sometimes, or even taking for the beginning the use cases, but that are specialized or very focused on that segment. So you don't create a bottleneck on your team for innovation, because otherwise you will be always answering to the final request or to the end request of the specific department. So it's actually a way of organizing data teams that I have seen on several corps, several established companies, and I think it works pretty well. I guess the main disadvantage I see personally on that pattern is that then you have multiple people using data at different ways, which may create redundancies or inefficiencies on the process. But I guess that's the issue you always have.
Yeah, exactly. And it's something that needs to evolve over time, I guess, as well. If the company gets more data mature and used to being data driven, I guess there might also be versions of competence centers and more centralized aspects as well, where you have a higher efficiency, which you don't have in that kind of decentralized or hub and spoke model. But in between, there are like intermediate states as well. For instance, with these other data teams that I described in the beginning, like the IoT guys and text people, for instance, we have established like a roundtable exchange format and want to build also abilities to get these synergies across the department and not to do something that someone has solved already in another department again from scratch. So to avoid these situations that you just described, but it's not a perfect fit, but it's at least, as you said, the advantage is that you get a close tie to the actual like product owner, to the actual domain specific knowledge as well. So that's, I guess, might be a development process as well, and end up in 5 years into a different setting as well.
Yeah, I have seen on this on other clients like this organization, and then they try to unify the data teams into a single unit. 2 years later, it was again the same central team for innovation, and then individual teams per department. So I guess that's the natural way of organizing data teams. Because I have seen like this resistance on companies saying, we need to merge them all together because it's getting, too difficult to handle multiple data teams. So let's just put them all together. And 6 months later, 1 year later, you start seeing new use cases being covered individually on those departments, and then they hiring individual data teams again. So I think maybe the learning outcome here is that that's a format that works in general, and that the natural way of people organizing around data in large companies is exactly that.
Yeah. It's a process.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, then regarding your own team, because I have the same challenges when I try to organize a team at NILG.AI, I also face this. So you were mentioning, like, should we organize by squad, like by use case, or by domain areas? Like, these are the data engineering people, these are the data analysts, these are the data scientists, these are the ML ops, etc. The way that has worked for us is more by use case or by squad, because then I believe it starts getting like different companies, each one with its own culture. So in this way, I think it's easier to keep them unified. But then, of course, it's much more difficult to professionally grow and create interest, specialized profiles inside each one of these teams, right? Because the data analyst will be always working with the data scientists, so they are not like on a close tribe of data analysts. They are always interacting, which from my point of view is better for creating synergies. It's worse for growing highly skilled and specialized professionals, I guess.
Yeah, so it's also, it needs to fit to the people. So if you really have people that really want to do only one role and dig into that role into level 17, we know. So really being in the details, that could be one approach. If you want to have people that also need to understand what's the bigger context of it, and being in context with the company, with the client, on your perspective, and understanding why it is important for the client, basically, then I think it would be even more productive to get these people the chance to be more generalistic and follow data engineering and over analyzing and going to modeling at the end. So it also depends. It needs to be a fit to the staff you currently have as well.
I think that as people grow professionally, they start realizing that they cannot get into that very specific niche, and that they need to have a more horizontal knowledge, at least at some point. So maybe a data scientist won't be a data engineer or a data analyst, but needs to be constantly interacting with these other tribes, because you are serving. So each one of these groups are serving the others. Nice. So what kind of technologies have you used? I know you have used recommender systems because we have worked on a project together. What other technologies around data and AI have you pursued so far?
Yeah, exactly. We are pretty broad in our technologies, so we have a dedicated tool stack for our analytics team. So far, we are currently enlarging that to a cloud environment, to a hyperscale environment. So being able to do also like big data analysis, which you don't have the ability so far, but that will come with the future as well. In the near future already. Currently, in terms of techniques, as you said, recommendation engines in terms of predicting what kind of apartments could be suitable for one potential lead or potential tenant. So for one person that is interested in renting a flat, basically, that's something which is really relevant for our core business. So these like recommendations engines have been pretty popular so far. And you can think of, for instance, like scoring things, going from the initial contact with potential leads to basically also scoring of potential follow-up deals or follow-up contracts that you might conclude with that person. So to give you a concrete example, the probability or the score of people that might also sign for a contract on electricity or on multimedia or on internet, which we also offer within the company, is something that's highly interested for our company as such. So being able to rate that and coming up with prediction algorithms to give a good grasp on what could be the target group on a data-driven basis. These prediction models are what we are working on as well, but also focusing on process efficiency internally. So when something, for instance, happens and a client, a tenant calls our call center or writes an email to a call center or even accesses our customer app and comes up with a kind of complaint, we currently use an AI model that tells us something about the probability that this complaint might end up in a real big like legal dispute or like a real problem for the company as well. So getting the ability to prioritize these complaints and also sending specially skilled people like task forces on the real critical complaints, on the real critical customer tickets. That's something where we support the core business with. So these are the use cases, just to give you a few of them, that are really linked to our renting out business and also the maintenance of these flats as well. And on the other hand, we are following innovation use cases where we just want to demonstrate what is possible with the data that we have right now at hand on our flats, on the people living in there. So basically, we are working as on image recognition to get hold of what is in the flats already, what is the current state of the flats, to make our repair works even more efficient and faster and to the point. So there might be even more use cases in that direction that help us doing our internal processes, which are highly efficient right now already, but helping them with AI support to get even faster and less cost intensive for the future.
Yeah, just looking, for example, to the hands-on data initiatives you have like energy forecasting, so a lot of, I guess, time series on that direction.
Yeah, that comes on top. Yeah.
You have like a scheduling tool from the Craftman challenge. I don't remember the actual name, but it was something like
time schedule for all, I guess.
Exactly. Yeah. So a lot of also, I guess, more classical AI. If we want to think about scheduling as AI in that direction, then we have work, of course, in recommender systems together and computer vision. I will go into that in a few seconds. Before jumping into use cases and open innovation, which are a couple of topics that I want to tackle with you. If you have, so you know what was the picture of the data analytics team, I don't know, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 5 years ago, and you know the current pictures of their team, and you don't know, but you guess what will be its future version now with all of this transformation of the digital twins. What are 3 mistakes? I won't say they are mistakes because I guess they were ideal for their stage, maybe not for the future, but for those people that are listening to us and are building data teams, what are the 3 insights you want to share about how to organize them that you will have done differently if you know what you know now?
Yeah. I think one of the first learnings, I would call it perhaps, or frame it perhaps like that, is really to focus on a few showcases where you can really deliver value and being also on the positive side of news, basically, also within the company. So not doing everything at the same time, but really focusing on, let's say, one initiative that really you are thinking of that you can deliver value with the people that you currently have and the technology that you have, and also with the data at hand that you have and that is easily accessible. So that, as you might know, that or might think of, that's highly arguing for the little bit lower hanging fruits. So starting with the quick wins, basically, and really being able to deliver something and explaining why this is just the start of a journey, and this journey can continue or will continue, and then building upon that, apart from building a dream castle from the beginning on and then not being able to fulfill that kind of dream castle. So that would be one of my first learnings. The second learning would also be to think about external support as well. So leveraging like external partners, experts in the field, startups as well, deep tech startups in a special version as well. So being able to leverage outside knowledge and not having the claim to do everything on your own, but being much more than the orchestrator in the middle and using just for this or at least for the start others that can help you and from which you can learn and transfer knowledge into your own organization. I guess that makes project management a bit more complicated because you have much more stakeholders and external stakeholders, different languages, different systems as well, all that stuff. But nevertheless, I guess in total, in terms of the end result, the probability gets higher that you're really able to deliver something really, really special and something that really has impact. And I guess the last learning for me would be not to focus only, to frame it perhaps like that, on the doing, on the machine room you might think of, on the technique, on the technology as well, but also on the, I wouldn't call it the marketing side, but also on the stakeholder management. So getting the product owners, as I said before, into your use cases as soon as possible and delivering also the scope and the plan of the project from the beginning on with the product owners and also including top management as early as possible and reporting to top management regularly on a regular basis to really showcase that you are proceeding, that you're having results that can be showable already. So having this link to the client, one might say, even if it is an internal client in our setting, for instance, often, but nevertheless, having this constant buy-in and maintaining this kind of relationship, this is one of the third learning. I really like digging into the details, into the algorithms, into the technique, but one shouldn't forget the selling aspect of it, because otherwise there might be the risk of being just one team of nerds and nobody understands those nerds, and you need to avoid that impression and need to be accessible and reachable for the people and explain what you do and also explain what hasn't succeeded, for instance, in the last months, but being that open and being able to have that close relationship. I guess that would be my third learning that really helps in bringing data use cases into a productive setting at the end.
So, great, Bastian. So you're just summarize, wrapping this up, you have three main learning. Start with quick wins, leverage external support, collaboration with experts, and focusing on the business and not so much on the technical aspects of it, which is quite funny because two of these three are things that we constantly enforce or reinforce on this channel, which is focus on validation, which is the quick wins, right? So like fast validation. And I always think that AI is not so much of a technical problem, but of a human problem. So how you can involve the business on it more than building fancy models, etc. The second one, I don't promote it on the channel, which is external support, because we are the external support. So it looks bad if I promote myself that bad, but it's fine. It's nice that you think that's a relevant outcome. And yes, we don't do it with AI because we are an AI company, but we do it on other areas. And for sure, we should stand on the shoulders of giants and not try to rebuild everything from scratch. I guess that's nice. Okay, so how is the hiring process so far? Do you think we are more on? So is demand higher than supply of talent, or is supply higher than demand? What is the current stage for you?
I think it's pretty difficult to get really good people on board in a corporate that is not known to be data driven, perhaps phrase it like that, yet. Because I guess if we would be in Berlin, being like a very fancy data driven, highly valued startup, for instance, then I think recruiting might be a bit easier. But for Vonovia, we are situated in Bochum, which is in the heart of Germany, but it's not known to be a completely digital region so far. But one can mitigate that due to offering remote settings and being flexible on the location. But nevertheless, I guess we as a company need to get known to be data driven and to be seeking talent to get even more data driven. That's why we do also some marketing activities. That's why we support like startup competitions and all the, also for us, marketing opportunities to get also well known as a data driven employer. So all the employer branding activities, corporations with universities as well, internships and all that, what you can do. But it's a hard way to get really like a reputation for being data driven, and then building upon that reputation in terms of recruiting and getting people applying to yourself just because you are known to be data driven. On the other hand side, I guess currently we have talent on the market that has formerly worked for like large tech players that are currently struggling with the economic situation. So there might be some reluctance on the pressure of the market or the shortage of the market a little bit, but you also need to be flexible. We need to be flexible in terms of, let's say, hiring conditions, in terms of languages as well. We switched our team, for instance, to being English driven in our daily routines and so on. So that's pretty normal, I guess, for you guys, but actually for a big German corporate, that's not that usual so far. So being able to go or develop oneself further also is necessary in order to onboard new talent that has diverse backgrounds and so on. In general, nevertheless, we follow a recruiting strategy that looks at quality and that fit to our topics and team as well. So we are not like desperately hiring and getting just people to get people. We are still conducting like case study interviews, conducting deep tech interviews as well, in order to be able to really judge how that candidate fits to what we want to do with that candidate at the end. So it's still a highly selective process, but I guess we are pretty successful with that right now, and signed contracts for 2 other people to join our team in the next months. So I'm pretty confident that we can proceed with that process for the future.
Yeah, I'm glad to know. Yeah, I guess with all of this layoff spread that we have seen on big techs, also a lot of talent has resurfaced to other companies that maybe traditionally were not that digital, but that are like a solid or a robust option. So it's nice that you keep standards high and only hire on when there is a good match, because that guarantees like a sustainable team, sustainable approach for hiring. So regardless of being able to grow the team, I see you have invested a lot of open innovation, and actually the way we have collaborated so far is open innovation. So how have you leveraged open innovation together with teams? So how did this idea of using open innovation works for Vonovia?
Yes, for us, the open innovation principle comes without saying, because we are as an innovation department or innovation branch within Vonovia want to make use of innovative aspects, innovative methods within the company, and make innovation being like general process, like a discipline within the company as well. So by DNA, we gonna use open innovation to get further on that and bring interesting ideas and concepts into the company. For our data team, so for my team in special, for instance, we regularly go for pitches or reverse pitches of our ideas, of our problems, of our challenges, and have a close relationship with initiatives that really are on the other side are closely bound to the startup world of in the region, but also in Europe and globally. So that kind of open innovation principle really helps us, as I said before, to find interesting deep tech partners that help us on doing special challenges and doing special topics where we don't have the capabilities for, because this kind of specialization is, I guess, needed because the topics are so broad and so diverse, and also in the requirements in terms of technologies and experience, that we as a still small team can't cover everything from A to Z, basically. So using open innovation as a partnering approach to really get hold of interesting concepts and really learn something internally. And if it's just the management of a new topic and the first impression, the first, let's say, proof of concept result that we gather to be able to judge this technology better for us internally, then this is the result that is worth doing it. So it's basically for us also a trial and error thing, but we also need to be aware that not every proof of concept, for instance, in this open innovation setting is like prone by success at the end. So it also needs some tolerance for failures, tolerance for time that was invested just to get a learning at the end and not a really successful product. But that comes without saying. Innovation it's not just conflict within the company; it's also being able to cope with just non-successful cases or outcomes at the end. But still, I guess what we achieve by innovation is in very often cases so showable that we can build upon that and build further like use case ideas, further approaches, further questions upon that helps us to go into the real topic and follow up project and then being closer to what the company really needs at the end.
Yeah, the way I see open innovation is not necessarily only about solving problems and validating ideas, but also about learning on the interaction itself. So how are these other companies tackling these kind of challenges? What kind of processes do they have in place that we can borrow, and start adopting ourselves? So regardless of sometimes the pilot outcome, which in general, of course, any person involved in open innovation should drive for making it as successful as possible. Sometimes the learning itself of how to interact with other companies' cultures and challenging the internal way of doing things is the most valued learning outcome, I will say, from open innovation challenges. Yeah. Regarding how do you do? Let's say you do discovery of a use case. How do you decide if this use case will be handled internally or externally? Is it more of you see an opportunity and then the opportunity is from another company and it's direct, or is like you have a use case, you don't have the capacity, you go for open innovation? Is it you have a challenge you don't know how to solve and then you decide it's open innovation? How is the decision process between internal or external?
I think it's really multifaceted and individually to each question or to each use case or challenge. Basically, one could be just the capacity problem or the capacity constraint in terms of not having the time to try out everything. Basically, reframing it like that. The other motivation could be just the skill set that is required is so special, and we never have had experience with that so far. So we need to get someone external into it, and so open innovation can help us really to find interesting contacts and also potentially let several people or several partners from the external world try to solve the same problem. So like an internal competition and so on. So these two like motivations for open innovations come always, but generally speaking, I guess one also needs to be open to opportunities and just like ideas and chances that come across your way. So for instance, going to conferences, going for like prop tech conferences and all these exchange network topics brings you in contact with people that are really innovative, that bring ideas to the table that have never thought about, for instance, and then having that kind of leeway and a way to maneuver and to be able to follow that idea without any like being closely tied to a strategic plan or something like a budget and so on. So, but being able just to try it out in a limited scope and with limited efforts and money as well is also the third motivation, to be able to learn something and then find out whether this can be something where you can build upon. For instance, we once tried to work with location data based on smartphone usage within our portfolio, so fully compliant to data protection and all that stuff. So everything's clear, but nevertheless, we try to work with that data first and find out whether it tells us something. And that was just an idea that has never been on a strategic plan or was never being scored before, but came across and was so relevant for us that we just tried it out. And therefore, open innovation formats are very good suited, I would say, because it's a limited scope and it's a partnering approach. It's not taking too much capacity internally, and after a limited amount of time and money, you can say it's worth following that idea or it's not worth following that idea. It's like a test ride, and that's the third motivation I would bring to the table for these innovation or these open innovation formats.
Okay, so you have followed so far both the directed approach where you have a challenge and you try to outsource or do open innovation of that challenge, as well as the most suggestive open innovation where you just have an open problem and someone comes with a potential solution or with a potential technology that you want to tackle. Which one do you think has been more successful so far at Vonovia?
I think coming back to my success or learnings from before, being closely tied to a real problem within the company and being closely tied to a product owner that is really supporting you finding a solution based on data or AI is giving higher probabilities for real success in terms of having a solution at the end that can be a showcase that is not only technically feasible, but that brings also business value at the end. So that's, one could call it potentially the more sustainable way of doing it. Nevertheless, the other way around is also interesting, because then you can start selling it internally and finding people who might be interested in supporting that at the end. But if I could choose, I would prefer actually the cooperation thing with a product owner who has a concrete question to be answered, basically, and helping this product owner with our capacity, expertise, but also with the expertise from an external open innovation partner, is for me the more successful or the more prone to success rated case.
I guess it's much less exploratory, and in that sense, it has a higher chance of success. And in this direction of tackling first the low-hanging fruit and actually delivering value soon, it's a very key factor when we are doing open innovation, just to make sure people do not get culturally exhausted of open innovation and actually can take the outcomes of these projects into the next stage.
Yeah.
And how does the hands-on data, or formerly Data Hub at Ruhr, initiative works for you?
I think it's a pretty professional format. So we are pretty happy to have people that manage the format in a very professional way. So all the liaison management with the corporate world, also with the startup world, building up a brand, making a pretty successful and a pretty attractive format in terms of the hot conference and the marketing buzz also in social media around it. So that's a really high service level, if you could call it like that, for a corporate like Vonovia, because we couldn't create so much attraction or attention basically in the online world and also in the real physical startup world on our own, and also being able to, as you said before, to know what other companies are depicting as challenges, what their topics are, what they are currently working on, having this kind of exchange on a regular basis. That's also a very positive effect for us on this format. So we are pretty happy with that, and I think it's also valuable for the region, because it's tied to the Ruhr region, so to the area of north to Cologne, basically. But nevertheless, I think it's hard for the organizers to get like tension in the startup world, because there are more formats like that claiming for attention, and I guess it's a pretty hard job each year to create that buzz and that marketing pressure that is needed to get attractive startups and, first of all, attractive challenges into the play and to make it all turn. So thanks to those helping us here.
Yeah, I agree. At least, so I have participated not from the corporate side, but from the startup side, and it has been a very clearly defined scope with data challenges that are well defined. So I guess that's a major endeavor itself. So not so much the open innovation stage, but all the preparation towards kickstarting these stages is tricky. So in this case, how do you thinking at least about the flat finder challenge and the image insight challenges that we have solved together? How did you come to this idea? Was through the hands-on data process, were challenges that you already had thought about and you've find it suitable? How did you get to discover these use cases?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, because it's a little bit different for both cases. If we go for the first, the Flat Finder, or chronologically first, the Flat Finder is like a recommendation engine for alternative apartments for people that haven't been able to find, or that we couldn't serve with an available flat so far. And it's using data points from our website, from points of interest around the buildings, and much more richer data set than we just have in our search profile from each candidate. So it's really helping the business, and we are currently also preparing the implementation of it in a really productive setting towards the second half of the year. And we could show at the end, also in our SAP figures, which are really relevant for all our rental colleagues, that the Flat Finder is having a very positive effect on renting out flats, and renting out flats that are of interest to the tenant, or the potential tenant, rather saying, and the flats that are also of interest for Vonovia to rent out. So basically, it's a win-win situation. So that's what I said before. It's highly linked to a product owner, and we're pretty confident, or pretty grateful that we managed this challenge together, and it's a great result at the end that came out. The Image Insight, the second one in chronological order, is a little bit more of a try-out thing, not to value it at that point, but it's not that tightly linked to a product owner. So we don't have a clear, let's say, offer, or basically a clear question that came from our core business that we needed to answer. It's rather for us the ability to use the kind of unstructured data that we have about our buildings, that we have about our flats, and show that we can use that kind of unstructured data, so the images basically, and make a successful use case out of that. So it's more or less of an demonstrating case that the images have a value for us beyond just collecting them, basically. But it's also on an internal aspect. It's about learning how to do image recognition on a professional, high scalable way. And the learning also to handle this in a process from A to Z, because it starts with anonymization, for instance, in terms of data governance and all that stuff. So it's really data protection as well. So it's a really comprehensive thing that we tackled here, but it's not directly linked basically to SAP KPIs, where we can say, hey, that brings this and that in terms of benefit and EBITDA at the end. But as I said before, that's one of the use cases that might be as a corner basement for something that might be built upon that. And the next use case that we built upon that, based on the experience that we made with Image Insight, might be then something that really brings value to the table. But we couldn't have entered that one without doing the groundwork on the Image Insight, for instance. So it's of both categories, one use case, and both went pretty well, and have been highly interesting in cooperation also with NILG.AI.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, actually, the Flat Finder challenge for me, I think, was quite I won't say a surprise, because it's a potential outcome of an open innovation challenge, but just to give a bit of context to the audience. So these collaboration challenges are like 3 months pilots, where the external company, in this case the startup ourselves, we had to go into the infrastructure, learning the use case, building it, and for me it was kind of a major surprise that we actually managed to close the entire loop, build pilots, demonstrate value, all within this time frame. I think that was the outcome of actually having a product owner, as you said, that was actually involved here, a very directed use case. On the other side, on the Image Insights side, we have a drastically different scoping of the project, much more exploratory, much more oriented towards mastering a technique and what can be done with this technique. And I believe the outcomes of Image Insights are not to be seen in these 3 months collaboration. So although we already have good results, but in the longer term, especially now linked with this digital twins initiative that you have. So since we are going to collect all of this unstructured data, how can we then start building the foundations as an organization? I am saying we as you said, as Vonovia, but how can you build these foundations for computer vision? And in that regard, I believe we kind of managed to be successful on that regard too, I will say. I actually like a lot the hands-on data format, because since it is such time frame to validate, you make sure you focus on the right things and you get to an outcome in a limited amount of time. So you validate ideas fast. That's the way I like to see it. In terms of data governance, what kind of challenges have you seen in open innovation? Onboarding an external company within all of this context of data privacy, GDPR. So what are the main challenges you have seen here?
Yeah, I think it's always tricky to even if you talk about a lot of like personally related data, like tenant data, to get really in a cooperation with an external that you don't know so far. So building up a relationship here and building a trusted relationship up here is needed before you open up systems and getting access rights to raw data basically at the end, and being able or having the flexibility of the partner to work on your systems, so on the corporate systems at the end. And that's something that I guess we wasn't needed to discuss anyway. For the Flat Finder was absolutely needed because we are handling with personally related data here. So there was no alternative than working on Vonovia systems and building up a Vonovia like tool stack for the use case, and having NILG on board of that within our, let's say, security measures, within our monitorings and so on. But that's just a technical question as well. But having also very good, let's say, trusted relationship with a partner is another one, because you wouldn't open up even those technical doors to anybody that you don't know totally, or that you don't have a good feeling with at the beginning. Nevertheless, it's still a challenge to get the approval. On our side, we follow the strategy of integrating the parties that need to approve such an collaboration from the early beginning on. So that means for us, for instance, having our data protection officer closely aligned to what we do, even if we do it in an innovation setting. So even if it is not, or will not be rolled out to the crowd and to the productive environment at the end, getting constant updates and keeping them into the loop is an asset, because then we can also get some sparing and some support in framing and designing solutions that then will also be easily adaptable to productive setting at the end without changing the whole system basically at the end. And that was what we did for the Flat Finder. Basically, we now go, as I said, into the production phase. We have like an approval from our data governance data protection officer for that, but he has known the project also before. We kept him updated, and so we were able to phrase it and frame it and design it the way we will get an approval easily afterwards. And that's something that I think needs to be respected in a data project all the time, that it's not just at the last step to get the approval of a data governance or data, rather say, protection officer, but rather planning for that as one of the first steps to get some of the framings, the limits in which you can operate to design a solution that at the end will get an approval, and not doing something that is not realizable in terms of the data protection regime that you need to follow.
Yeah, I guess it's something cultural at Vonovia that I haven't seen that professionally executed in other companies. Okay. Which is, as soon as we got into Flat Finder, we already had a separate environment for the challenge where we wouldn't interfere with any of the rest of the infrastructure. You had the data already anonymized, only having the data that we needed and nothing else. So it's like privacy first principle. And I was quite surprised that an organization that is not considered like a digital company had this level of sophistication in the way data is delivered as on open innovation terms. I'm being completely honest with you. Like, I wasn't expecting this level of sophistication on the data privacy domain. So the awareness that you had since day one of Flat Finder, it's something that is not common to see on other companies. So congrats on that direction. It was quite impressive.
Thanks. Yeah.
I'm not sure if it is already something that you have implicit in the way you work, having this already, all of it anonymize only the data points you need, assessing the need to open each data point, but it was quite well executed for sure.
Yeah, you need to have not being excellent in terms of a data scientist and technically, but also being aware of what might be the hurdles in putting it into production and what might be the stakes that other stakeholders have on the solution at the end. And so it's one of the product owners basically is the data protection officer at the end, because as a large corporate, a stock listed corporate, we just can't afford to get a not only negative press, but also can't afford to get like a claim or something in a legal discussion that we will not want to pay for and will not want to follow actually. So that's also kind of a quality dimension for a data project at the end, that it is also by design suitable to fit into, let's say, the corporate strategy in terms of being compliant and being fully compliant to data protection rules, for instance.
Yeah. So in this direction, when we talk about open innovation within data science or AI, I guess not every company is already prepared for it because of this, data privacy designs. If you had to give 3 advices to other companies trying to embrace open innovation within a context of data-driven projects, AI, analytics, what would be your 3 suggestions in terms of data governance and privacy?
Yeah, I think one of the things is think of it like a sparings partner and not like a hurdle or something like an obstacle that you need to overcome. It's so the dialogue with with a lawyer, with a legal person, can be helpful to frame the solution that is now then at the end easily deployable. So it's the attitude towards the topic that needs to be like in a positive framing from the beginning on. So it's not like an ultimate filter at the end. It's like a support factor in the beginning. So that would be my first learning to change this kind of attitude. The second one would be to ensure the awareness for any data topics or data protection privacy topics from the beginning to the end. So basically, we on our side are closely cooperating with our data protection coordinator in our innovation branch. So we have a complete or intensive dialogue on a weekly basis, basically, so that we have a constant monitoring of activities that might be skeptical or might be critical, basically. So having this as a constant dialogue would be my second advice or learning. And I guess at the end, I think it's not about finding solutions that are technically the most advanced and the most fancy things. It's about the things that can be having impact and can be rolled out to the reality at the end, and shifting this kind of let's say claim or benchmark towards the doable and the applicable to the reality might also help to incorporate like data protection privacy topics from the beginning on, because it's not about making an Apple presentation or something that you can really showcase on a big conference. It's about helping your colleagues and product owners in creating value. So sticking to that kind of principle helps to think about data privacy, data protection from the beginning on as well. So that's also like a cultural thing I would depict as a third learning that I could, from my personal experience, recommend to others as well.
Yeah, and I saw involving the data officer as a key stakeholder from the beginning and not as a final filter, having awareness and constant discussion on data privacy with the entire organization, with the entire team, and focusing much more on the impact and real value delivery more than on the technical sophistication of the use cases. Nice. Yeah. Thank you. If I should add a fourth one, if I am allowed to do it, I will say more from a technical point of view or from a use case point of view, never add a data point to your models, to your systems that do not bring value to the end user. So if you are deciding if this data point should be observed or not by your AI, always consider if that data point is creating or not value to the end user. If not, there is not even a reason to expose this kind of data to the models. If it does create value, then you should have the discussions and you should do the risk assessment and all the evaluations with the data protection officer, etc.
Yeah, for sure. That's kind of data sparsity what you're appealing to.
Yeah, exactly. Now jumping into the image insights challenge, which is the most recent collaboration, I think this was kind of a complete different shift in terms of privacy, not because it was less private data in the sense of, or that you were less aware, but because we went to the end mile of privacy, which is we didn't even have data from the users. And that was, for me, the main challenge here. So when the team met and we saw the hands-on data website, the challenge, we saw, there is no data. So good thing, we don't have any GDPR risk, etc. But the main challenge here was creating the data set itself and collecting the data. So any learning outcome you want to share about this challenge, just to give some additional context, or maybe you can give it some additional context to the audience about the image insight challenge, the goal, etc., and how we manage this data thing.
Yeah, exactly. I can try to summarize up it a bit. Actually, the challenge is about finding out what is actually what is a kind of a damage that is shown that a tenant that is shown on a picture which a tenant sends over to us as a landlord at the end. So the basic process could be that you as a tenant observe something is broken in your bathroom. Actually, you take a picture of this broken thing in your bathroom with your smartphone, sending it over to your landlord, and then it comes to the point where that landlord, Vonovia at that point in the example, needs to do something with the picture. And our claim or the challenge was here to use the picture in an automated way in order to find out what is actually shown there. So what is the kind of problem here? And we try to separated sliced the problem into different layers. One layer is basically finding out what kind of appliance might be broken here. So we focused on the scope of on the bathroom actually in this kind of proof of concept phase already. And then the appliance type is the first layer, and the second layer will also then on top be after having found out that, for instance, the bathtub is the problem, then specifying in a more detailed way what exactly is broken, what is the kind of damage, is it rust, or is it broken in terms of there's a cut into it, or what is really the thing, and then that structural information on the appliance type, on the damage quality, basically at the end being able on that structured information to judge what is needed to cure it. Do we need a spare part? Does a quick fix help? Who needs to be there? What kind of craftsman do you need? So translating the unstructured picture, just showing something, into a structured information that we can use on our side as a landlord, as a large landlord, to optimize our processes and to streamline our scarce resources. And the target picture is to go to that tenant that has the problem shown on the picture and being able to solve it on the first visit. And avoiding any time the situation that you need to go there first in order to understand what is really the problem, then go back to your deposit, get your spare part you need, or contact your colleague who's more qualified than yourself, and then this one will come back for a second visit in order to repair the thing that is broken. So the learning case would be here to really come from an unstructured, democratically taken picture. Anybody could take pictures and translate it into a highly streamlined process that can help the company in an automated way to get more efficient at the end. And basically that's the challenge. In my own words, it's a bit complicated to explain without any images, because images makes the world easier to explain. But it's for us a completely new case in order to enter the field of image recognition, also entering the field of unstructured data, but also entering the field of having no training data, as you said, Kelvin, before, because we were reluctant to use real tenant data from the start and try to find workarounds that have been worked out pretty well.
Yeah, and I think, this for us was like the main challenge. Like, how are we going to solve this problem without any data? And I think we came out with a very reasonable solution that I would like to share with the audience in case you want to use it, which is, the timing for this project was kind of perfect, because it was right at the hype of the generative AI trend with ChatGPT, OpenAI, DALL-E, Midjourney, etc. So what was our solution? We basically took DALL-E, the OpenAI system to generate images, and we just asked, please generate 1,000 toilets clogged or with rust or with whatever, and then do the same for bathtubs and sinks, etc. So we created a data set that by definition doesn't break any privacy concerns, or doesn't have any privacy concerns of the tenant's real data, because, it doesn't involve any real data from the company. It's all external, synthetically generated data. And again, here we should think, should we go with synthetic or real? I guess it depends if it creates value or not. What we observe through the challenge is that, of course, the performance you will reach with synthetic data, maybe it's not the best performance you will get, but it's a very good starting point to validate the use case, to understand if it is feasible or not, and to even have some initial models working towards it. Actually, we also did this. So as part of the image insight, I wouldn't get quiet if we didn't validate more than one type of structured data. So we also replicated for ChatGPT, and we asked ChatGPT, generate 10,000 emails of a tenant complaining about A or about B or about C with different tones, with different consequences. One is more angry, the other one is less angry, another one is on Berlin, another one in the rural area. So we ended up with I don't know the right number, but I think it was around 20,000 emails, something like that, or images plus images. So that is like a new era for AI, on my personal opinion, which is now you don't even need data to tackle a use case, or real data to tackle a use case, which open up the universe of models you can create without damaging privacy concerns from your clients. So thank you, Bastian. Now I would like to wrap up with what are your, 3, 5, you tell me, predictions of AI in real estate. How do you see real estate being transformed in 15 years, as wrong as those predictions will be, because we cannot predict what I'm going to take as breakfast tomorrow, but what are your predictions for the next 15 years of AI in real estate?
Thanks for that challenge. I think it's really difficult to predict. I think in general, one could think of a really a digitalized user experience actually in being a landlord and renting out flats to the people. For us, it's this customer experience that will help us to really come up with solutions or needs or answers to needs, rather saying that the customer really hasn't thought of, but thinks, okay, that's exactly what I need. Things like offering the next best flat, for instance. So offering to people that have a certain age and certain interest, what the next flat could be in order to meet their changed interest over time, basically things like that in the rental process. But beyond that, I think for us as a company that also builds new buildings, and that's urgently needed in Germany to get more space for people to live, to come from a life cycle approach and go also and look into new buildings and cover these buildings over their entire use case, over their entire life cycle with AI features and basically solutions that help the construction process, that help the maintenance process and the modernization, the constant modernization processes, but also that help the people that live within those buildings. And that also applies logically also for the brownfield, so for the existing buildings right now. So covering the entire life cycle of a building and of our business model, basically, with individual AI-powered services will become much more normal and the current state not something very special anymore. I would predict. I guess that's what can be predicted pretty sure, that it will be commoditized in a way, but nevertheless that won't go just as it develops as such. It needs to be managed, it needs to be steered, and it needs to be wanted at the end as well. So having a digitalization strategy, a data strategy as well, coming back to infrastructure questions, data governance questions, cultural questions in the company. These are things that really will become more important in order to be able to achieve that target picture or vision at the end. And so that's important now to kick off and to start and to lay the foundation for it.
Yeah, thank you, Bastian. So
that's
real
vague,
estate, yeah. It makes sense. So real estate, I will say, is one of the oldest industries. Maybe, I know we have hunters and collectors before, in prehistoric times, but we also had real estate as an industry. The pyramids in Egypt prove that, right? And it has remained kind of unchanged so far. So I guess if you take anyone that invested in real estate 2,000 years ago and you put it today, they will do kind of the same thing, or they will understand more or less how to invest in real estate in short term. I'm not sure if the reality will be the same in 20 years from now with all of the progress that AI is making, not just on the way we interact with buildings, we interact with landlords, but also on the way we are building the new infrastructure, the infrastructure of the future. So thank you, Bastian, for being here. It has been an honor.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. I hope you guys enjoy this podcast, this episode, and that you took value out of it. Thank you all. Thank you, Bastian.